30th, 1974, in a match that became legend. Ahead of the festivities being organized by the Democratic Republic of Congo's presidency and the U.S. Embassy, about 20 boxers from across Africa recalled the fight as they sparred at a sports ground in Kinshasa during an amateur championship this month. The fight of the century is a great memory for us. It's a cause for great celebration for the Congolese because it happened here, said Shilombo Mukadi, coach of Congo's national boxing team. It means a lot to the young people. We encourage them with these so as not to erase history, he went further to add. His boxers were among those ducking and weaving in the dusky light at the open-air ground, gearing up for the 21st African Amateur Boxing Championship. Muhammad Ali was more technical and made an impressive spectacle. We can learn a lot from following his movements, said Zadia Modestin, a boxer from Kinshasa whom Mukadi had earlier put through her paces. The televised flight attracted some of the world's most prominent figures to a country known by most Westerners at the time only for its periodic bouts of instability. In victory, Ali regained the world title 7 years after it was stripped from him for refusing to be drafted to fight in Vietnam, cementing his iconic status, which has endured to this day. Sudan's paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, killed at least 124 people in a village in El Gajira state on Friday, activists said, in one of the deadliest incidents of an 18-month war, and largest in a spate of attacks in the state. Following the surrender of high-ranking RSF officer Aboualgla Kilkal to the army last Sunday, pro-democracy activists say the RSF has carried out revenge attacks in the farming state where he comes from, killing and detaining civilians and displacing thousands. Jazeera has already faced a months-long rampage in which residents told that RSF looted homes, killed scores of civilians and displaced hundreds of thousands. Al-Sireha village in the north of the state experienced the worst of the recent violence when at least 124 people were killed and 100 injured in the RSF raid. The Wad Madani Resistance Committee, a pro-democracy group, said on Saturday. In a statement on Friday, the RSF accused the army of arming civilians in Jazeera and of using forces. The army and the RSF did not respond to requests for comment. The RSF has seized control of large parts of Sudan in a conflict with the army that the United Nations says has caused one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. The war has displaced more than 11 million people, driven parts of the country to extreme hunger, famine, and drawn in foreign powers that have given both sides material support. It began in April 2023 when tensions between the RSF and the army, who had previously shared power, erupted into open conflict at a time when Sudan should have been transitioning to civilian rule after a 2021 coup. The RSF militia is raiding east, west, and central Jazeera and committing extensive massacres in one village after another, the committee said. Images on social media shared by the committee and others purported to show dozens of bodies wrapped for burial and mass graves being dug. Tunisia's Coast Guard has recovered the bodies of 15 migrants off the coast of the towns of Malou-Lech, Salakta and Cheba, a judicial official said on Monday. He said the bodies of 13 sub-Saharan African migrants also were recovered in the same area. Botswana will hold a general election on Wednesday, with President Mogwitsi Masisi competing against 3 challengers from a second term in the diamond region. Relative prosperity thanks to its diamond wealth and small population, which gets free healthcare and education. It is the world's top producer by value of the gem. But a downturn in the diamond market has put a squeeze on revenues in the last few years. DP has been in power too long and accused it of economic mismanagement and corruption, which it denies. Diamonds have not been selling since April, so yes, revenues are down, but the economic fundamentals still remain intact, said Masisi at a presidential debate last week. We're going to continue with the projects and policies we have come up with that are aimed at putting more money and wealth into the hands of the citizens of this country, he said. One success of his first term was negotiating a new contract with diamond giant, which will give Botswana a greater share of its rough diamonds. He also lifted a ban on elephant hunting, which, citing rising Biden stood aside earlier this year in the contest that now pits Republican Donald Trump against Democratic Kamala Harris. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump headlined a rally at New York's Madison Square Garden on Sunday that began with a series of vulgar and racist remarks by allies of the former president. Trump, a New York celebrity for decades, hoped to use the argument against Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, even though the state last backed a Republican presidential candidate in 1984. Trump criminals if he wins the November 5th election. On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history, he said. I will rescue every city and town that has been invaded and conquered. Trump called Harris a very low IQ individual and drew cheers from supporters for his thought on migrants rhetoric. He vowed to ban sanctuary cities which refused to cooperate with the federal government in enforcing immigration laws, and to invoke the 1798 Alien Enemies Act. Pro wrestler Hulk Hogan to former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani to Trump's sons Eric and Don Jr. Some used racist and misogynistic language in warming up a capacity crowd. Giuliani, a former personal lawyer to Trump, falsely claimed that Harris was on the side of the terrorists in the Israeli-Palestinian comedian. Cleve used Puerto Rican singer Ricky Martin has criticized Trump's joke about Puerto Rico, calling the Caribbean U.S. territory a floating island of garbage. While Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, they cannot vote in U.S. general elections. However, millions of Puerto Ricans who have moved to the mainland U.S. can vote, and there is a large community in Pennsylvania. Hillary Clinton has accused Trump of empowering white supremacists with dehumanizing and racist rhetoric. Trump rejected the comparison to the 1930s and has called for a Make America Great Again campaign. It show Harris and Trump neck and neck in battleground states with over 38 million votes cast across the country. Trump has sought to tie Harris to the Biden administration's handling of immigration and the economy. Low growth, high debt, and escalating wars topped the official agenda at the International Monetary Fund and World Bank annual meetings, but finance leaders spent much of their energy worrying about the potential impacts of a return of Donald Trump to power in November's U.S. presidential election. Republican candidate Trump's gains in recent polls to erase much of the early advantage of his Democratic opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, was part of nearly every conversation among finance officials, central bankers, and civil society groups attending the meetings in Washington this past week. Among concerns were Trump's potential to upend the global finance system with massive tariff increases, trillions of dollars more in debt, issuance, and a reversal of work to fight climate change in favor of more fossil fuel energy production. Everyone seemed to worry about high uncertainty on who would become the next president and what policies would be taken under the new president, Bank of Japan Governor Kazuo Ude said. Another central banker, speaking on condition of anonymity, described the concerns more bluntly. It's starting to feel like Trump is going to win. Trump has vowed to impose a 10% tariff on imports from all countries and 60% duties on imports from China. This would hit supply chains throughout the world, likely triggering retaliation and raising costs. German Finance Minister Christian Lindner told newsmen on Friday, October 25th, that there would only be losers in a U.S.-EU trade war. Trump has also sought to entice U.S. voters with offers of numerous tax breaks, from extension of all 2017 individual tax cuts to exempting income from tips, overtime pay, and Social Security retirement benefits. Budget analysts say this would add at least another $7.5 trillion in new U.S. debt over a decade, on top of the $22 trillion in debt growth previously estimated by the Congressional Budget Office through 2034. A Harris victory, by contrast, is being viewed by finance officials as a continuation of President Joe Biden's re-engagement in multilateral cooperation over the past 4 years on climate, corporate taxes, debt relief, and development bank reforms. Her plans also are likely to increase debt, but far less than Trump's. Biden kept in place Trump's previous tariffs on imports of steel, aluminum, and Chinese goods, raising them steeply on Chinese imports in new industries such as electric vehicles and solar. Harris has endorsed this targeted approach and has slammed Trump's broad tariff plans as a $4,000 consumer tax on American families. Governor Gavin Newsom has proposed increasing the money available for film and television production incentives in California to $750 million annually from $330 million, his office said on Sunday. Newsom's office said the tax credit expansion was to lure some lost filming production back into Hollywood's home state, which has recently been affected by limited tax credit funding and increased competition. California lost an estimated $1.6 billion in production spending due to limited tax credit funding between 2020 and 2024. Colin Bell, the director of the California Film Commission, said California needs to keep pace with competing states and nations in providing aggressive tax incentives, Bell added. The face conservative candidates secured the majority needed for a photo finish. Of the 60% of votes tallied, OC had secured 41.5% support, according to the official count on Sunday. 69%, while Adres Ojada, a young social media savvy conservative, had if eventually knocked out in the first round. If no presidential candidates gets more than 50% of the vote on Sunday, a second round will be held in November 24th. Uruguay's race between two centrist candidates bucks a Latin American trend of sharp right-left divides, with significant overlap between the major conservative and liberal coalitions taking some of the things out of the result. The nation of 3.4 million, known for its beaches, legalized marijuana, and stability, also voted for its next vice president and members of parliament on Sunday. Vote counting was also underway for two binding plebiscites, one on a pension reform that would lower the retirement age by 5 years to 60, and another that would boost police powers to fight drug-related crime. Exit polls show both were likely rejected. Uruguayans appeared to reject the $22.5 billion pension overhaul. Two exit polls showed and Equipoll's consultors 61% of eligible voters struck down the proposal versus 39% who voted in favor. The security referendum also failed, according to Equipoll's consultors, securing less than 40% support as polling stations closed on Sunday. Hundreds of Broad Front supporters in capital Montevideo in the city's waterfront to await the results. Sao Paulo Mayor Ricardo Nunes was re-elected on Sunday to serve another 4 years in Brazil's largest city, defeating leftist challenger Guilherme Boulos in municipal runoffs that confirmed a rightward swing by voters that could shape the country's 2026 presidential and congressional elections. Voters cast ballots in mayoral runoff elections in 51 cities, including 15 state capitals. The capitals, though hard, right former President Jair Bolsonaro's Liberal Party, PL, did not do as well as expected. President Lula da Silva's leftist Workers' Party prevailed in just one of those races. Brazil's Electoral Authority said Nunes won with 59.5% of the votes, against 40.5% for Boulos. Nunes was backed by Sao Paulo Governor Tarcísio de Freitas, who emerges as the likely standard-bearer of Brazil's right to succeed Bolsonaro. The Sao Paulo race was movement remains strong, even though he was banned by Brazil's Electoral Authority from seeking elected office until 2030 for his baseless attacks on the entire political hair. The defeat of Boulos was a setback for Lula, whose party won the mayor's seat in only one state capital, Fortaleza, in his political bastion in northeastern Brazil. The agricultural state Goiás, the PL party lost the mayoral race in state capital Junília to candidates of the conservative União Brazil, who was backed by center-right state governor Ronaldo Caiado. Lula's PT party fared poorly in parts due to his falling popularity and to his reluctance to campaign for candidates at risk of being defeated. A head injury a week ago kept him from campaigning in the closing days of the race. Heading a minority government, Lula has become increasingly hostage to a conservative Congress in Brasilia to be able to govern. Bolivia's former leader, Evo Morales, has accused incumbent President Luis Arce's government of attempting to assassinate him after unidentified gunmen opened fire on his car. Mr. Morales, 65 years old, alleged his car was struck by bullets in an early morning ambush on Sunday while he was being driven in the rural region of Chapare. Video taken from inside a moving car shared with newsmen shows Mr. Morales talking on the phone seated in the front passenger seat before the vehicle. Those were seen on both cars and the driver appeared to have been injured. Elite agents of the Bolivian state attempted to take my life today, Mr. Morales wrote on social media. A statement from a ruling movement towards socialism party bloc aligned with the former president said his convoy was ambushed near a military barracks by two vehicles with heavily armed men dressed in black in what it called not an isolated incident. As the author in their attempt to assassinate Evo Morales. Bolivia's Deputy Security Minister, Roberto Reyes, insisted police had not acted against the former president. He said authorities were investigating a theory that Mr. Morales had staged a possible self-attack. Citing allegations swelling within the government, he directed the assault on himself to help his own political fortunes. Veteran journalist in Venezuela has not been heard from since Friday. Last had contact with his relatives on Friday and that his colleagues had denounced his detention, although it did not specify the date. 19 people were killed and 6 others were injured when a bus heading to Juarez crashed on Saturday morning on a highway in the central Mexican state of Zacatecas. State authorities said the passenger bus from Omnibus de Mexico was traveling from Tepic, Nayarit to the border city of Juarez, Johua. Authorities in Zacatecas said in the news statement. accident occurred in the early morning hours on Saturday, October 26, when a bus collided with the back of a tractor-trailer carrying corn, which had come loose. Newsmen reported. The bus rolled and fell into a ravine. The Zacatecas governor early on Saturday initially reported a preliminary death toll of 24 people, but the state attorney general's office later revised the tally. The statement newsmen reported. Recovery efforts to retrieve the bodies of some of the victims from the wreckage in the ravine were taking place on Saturday, involving emergency responders and the Mexican Army and National Guard. Newsmen reported that the Attorney General's office said it was carrying out investigations to arrest the driver of the tractor-trailer. The victims did not include migrants, according to the Attorney General's office. The injured passengers were being treated at hospitals in the city of Zacatecas. They were identified by state authorities as Carlos Eduardo Perez Delgado, Enrique Paredes Ruiz, Gustavo Adolfo Mesel, Esol Nathaniel Pina, Casas Alondra Rodriguez Mariscal, and Gulamo Padilla Avila. The names of the persons who died were pending formal identification. China State Council issued several measures to boost policies that support childbirth and promote a childbirth-friendly society. The official Xinhua News agency said on Monday. The measures include strengthening childbirth and child care services, increasing support measures for education, housing and employment, as well as actively building a no marriage and childbearing culture. Philippines is confident in the continuity of U.S. policies in the Asia-Pacific region after the U.S. presidential election. Its defense said, underlining that Philippine to U.S. ties would remain strong regardless of the outcome. Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro said the alliance between the two countries is anchored in shared security goals and a commitment to uphold international law, including in the contested waters of the South China Sea. Our support for initiatives bilaterally and multilaterally is bipartisan, aside from the fact that we are operating together on institutional grounds and foundational grounds, Teodoro said in an interview. Teodoro said China's misbehavior in the South China Sea has placed the Philippines at the forefront of regional security concerns, sparking a global response. Simply put, China has given the Philippines some prominence that in normal terms, if everybody followed the rules of the road, if they didn't do bad things, then this prominence of the Philippines would not be there, Teodoro said. So it's all China's fault right now because there's a fault. There's a felt need to band together because of the misbehavior that this is happening. China's defense and foreign ministers and the U.S. Embassy in Manila did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Teodoro's remarks. The U.S. presidential election will take place on November 5th with Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris and Republican Donald Trump locked in a close race. Tensions are high in the South China Sea, where China claims sovereignty over nearly all of the waterway, challenging Southeast Asian nations, including the Philippines and recently Vietnam and Indonesia. Last week, Indonesia expelled a Chinese Coast Guard vessel from its waters after it interfered with an energy survey, while Vietnam this month accused Chinese authorities of assaulting its fishermen in the disputed waters. There is a pronounced aggressiveness of China's expansionist agenda here, Teodoro said, linking it to Chinese President Xi Jinping's efforts to legitimize his leadership. The Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague wrote that Beijing's claims in the South China Sea have no legal basis, siding with the Philippines, which brought the case. But China has rejected the ruling, leading to a series of sea and air confrontations as the Philippines has ramped up patrols and resupply missions to defend its exclusive economic zone EEZ from Beijing's encroachments. Uzbekistan's Liberal Democratic Party has won 64 seats out of 150 in Uzbekistan's parliament, with 42.7% of the vote in Sunday's election, the Central Election Commission said on Monday. The National Revival Democratic Party got 29 seats. Adolat's Social Democratic Party won 21 seats. People's Democratic Party seats and the Environmental Party 16 seats. North Korea's defense ministry has accused South Korea's military of sending drones into its territory for political purposes, with the spokesperson from Kim Jong-un's country warning the neighbor of merciless offensive if such a case recurs. According to state media KCNA, North Korea Defense Ministry says South Korea sending drones into its territory was an infringement upon the country's sovereignty. The ministry further said it carried out investigations and claimed that it was found that South Korean drones flew over Pyongyang at least 3 times in October to distribute anti-North leaflets. KCNA has also published images of what it described as a crash South Korean military drone. As per an analysis of the drone's flight control program, North Korean authorities say that since June 2023, they uncovered more than 230 flight plans and flight logs, including a plan to scatter political motivational rubbish. A record from October 8 showed that the drone had departed the south border island of Bengyongdo late at night and a few hours later released leaflets over the Foreign and Defense Ministry buildings in Pyongyang. The Conservative Liberal National Party in Australia's Queensland state was on track on Sunday to end almost a decade of centre-left Labour government after a general election held on Saturday. Votes were still being counted on Sunday, but a partial count showed the Liberal National Party was polling well at a primary vote of 41.9%, with the governing Labour Party on 32.8%, according to the Electoral Commission of Queensland. Today, Queenslanders voted for hope over fear. They have voted for a fresh start, and they have voted for a majority LNP government, the party's leader David Crisafulli told supporters on Saturday night. Crisafulli campaigned strongly on getting tough on crime, which he says is out of control in the state. Queensland recently weighed extending warrantless stop-and searches by police after calls for greater public security. Incumbent Labour Premier Stephen Marks took the job from 3-time election winner Anastasia Palaszczuk, who retired last year after governing the state since 2015. Bulgaria's centre-right Gerb party won a parliamentary election on Sunday. Preliminary results showed, but it will have to seek a coalition partner to form a government. According to preliminary results from the State Election Commission, based on a partial vote count, Gerb won 26.08% of the votes. The Reformists says that they continue to change party came second with 14.76%. The Commission website showed on Monday morning after counting more than 82% of the votes, while the ultra-nationalist Revival Party came third with 13.8%. Sunday's election. The 7th in 4 years was triggered by the failure of Bulgaria's political parties to agree on forming a coalition government after an inconclusive election on June 9. Job leader Boyko Borisov on Monday morning thanked voters for their support and said his party would form a new government. We will work together with everyone except Revival, he said. Bulgaria has been bound by a short-lived government since 2020 when anti-graft protests helped to end a coalition led by the Gerb party. Bulgaria needs a period of stable, well-functioning government to accelerate the flow of European Union funds into its creaking infrastructure and nudge it towards adoption of the euro. Plans to join the eurozone have already been pushed back twice because of missed inflation targets. Accession is currently slated for January 25, 2025. Many voters say they fear further uncertainty ahead. Even if they don't manage to form a government, I don't give it a high chance of a successful and healthy lifespan in terms of the next 4 years, Stoyan Danin, 37, in Sofia, told newsmen. The Kremlin said on Monday that outside parties were trying to destabilize Georgia after the United States and the European Union called for an investigation into alleged violations in a parliamentary election there. The ruling Georgian Dream Party won the election with nearly 54% of the vote, according to official results that the opposition disputed. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov denied any Russian interference in the vote. Western governments are concerned about what they see as a tilt by Georgia away from Europe and towards Moscow, more than 3 decades after the Caucasus nation won independence when the Soviet Union collapsed. President Salome Zurabichvili, an opponent of Georgian Dream, on Sunday referred to the results as a Russian special operation. She did not clarify what she meant by the term. Peskov said Russia strongly rejected such allegations. He said there had been attempts by European actors to interfere in the election, but not by Moscow. We strongly reject such accusations. As you know, they have become standard for many countries. At the highest thing, they immediately accuse Russia of interference. No, that is not true. There was no interference and the accusations are absolutely unfounded, Peskov said. Ukrainian drones targeted ethanol plants in Russia's southern region of Voronezh, Russian channels on the Telegram app said, while the regional governor said the attack injured 2 people, sparked a fire and damaged 2 industrial enterprises. Firefighters have doused the fire in the region's Aniskaya district that injured 2 workers. Alexander Guzev, the regional governor, the front line. Courts in southern Thailand on Monday dropped a case against former state security personnel and officials over the deaths of 85 Muslim protesters in 2004, saying none of those suspects had been apprehended. Families of the victims of what is known as the Tag Bai massacre in April accused 7 soldiers and government officials of murder, attempted murder, and unlawful detention. The Narathiwat Provincial Court formally accepted the case in August. While there was enough evidence for an indictment, the court said the case was unable to proceed as no suspects were arrested and brought to the court. And as a result, the 20-year statute of limitations expired on Friday. The court statement noted that its order is not a dismissal of the charges against the suspects, as they had never entered the legal proceedings but fled until the statute of limitations expired. One of those named is Pisal Watawangiri, commander of the 4th Army Region at the time of the incident. At the time of the indictment in August, he was a lawmaker of the ruling Pheu Thai party. The party said he filed a medical leave to seek treatment abroad and resigned from the party earlier this month. Other suspects were also believed to have left the country after the indictment. The case earned notoriety because of the manner in which the victims died. On October 25th, 2004, thousands of protesters gathered at a police station in Narathiwat, Tagbai district to demand the release of 6 Muslim men who had been detained several days earlier. The detainees, members of an official village defense force, were accused by police of handing over weapons to Muslim insurgents but reporting them stolen. 7 of the protesters were shot dead after the demonstration turned violent. Around 1,300 of them were later rounded up, had their hands tied and were loaded onto trucks, stacked like firewood. By the time the vehicles reached an army base where they were taken to be detained, 78 had died of crushing or suffocation. Several others were seriously injured or become disabled due to crushing. The deaths of Muslim residents in Thailand's southern provinces of Narathiwat, Pattani and Yala occurred after Muslim separatist insurgency erupted. The legal team is expected to pursue alternatives, including investigations into police delay. The UN Special Rapporteurs of the Human Rights Council have called for the investigation and pursuit of justice to continue even after the statute of limitations expires. Prime Minister Pentongtang Shinawatra has apologized to those affected and pledged to prevent similar incidents from happening again. Lithuania's incoming social democratic government will target defense spending of at least 3.5% of its gross domestic product, the party's leader said on Monday. The Baltic country of 2.9 million people, which neighbors Russia, will spend about 3% of GDP on its armed forces this year, according to NATO estimates, making it the military alliance's 6th biggest spender as a share of its economy. 3/4 of Lithuanians think Russia could attack their country in the near future. A Baltijos Tyramai Alta opinion poll found in May following its attack on Ukraine in 2022. Our election manifesto says that it should be not less than 3.5%, and this is unavoidable. Security and defense will receive as much money as needed. Social Democratic leader Villager Blink V. Cute told newsmen reporters after party's landslide elections victory on Sunday. She pledged continuity with the outgoing center-left government of Homeland Union in foreign security and defense policies. Lithuania was among the harshest critics of Russia and supporters of Ukraine in the European Union and NATO under the outgoing government. China downgraded its diplomatic ties with Lithuania in 2021, introduced trade barriers and pressured a multinational to drop Lithuanian parts after it allowed Taiwan to open a de facto embassy in its capital, Vilnius. And that's the package on the international news for today. Before we go, let's take a look at the major stories. We told you that Congo prepares for 50th boxing anniversary. We also told you that 124 people killed after RSF attack village. Biden to vote in presidential election on Monday. We also told you that press groups demand whereabouts of missing journalists. You heard that Liberal Democrats lead in Uzbekistan parliamentary election. Ukraine drones targets Russia's ethanol plants. Russia pounds Kharkiv region, wounding 21 people. Thank you so much for watching. That's it on the international news. I am Victor Peter. Remember, you can follow us on our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, at Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube at Atlantic Television Network, Instagram at Atlantic TV Network. Watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Business news comes up next. To stay with us.
The people of Maiduguri need your help. A catastrophic flood has engulfed the city, leaving over 1 million residents stranded and fighting for survival. Entire communities are submerged, with people trapped inside homes and on rooftops cut off